Okay, let's get into this one. Today I want to talk about Stephen King's Silver Bullet, which came out in 1985. I just watched this one. I've seen it before, but it had been a long time. And before I really get thick into the review, I do have to preface that I consider myself at least interested in a lot of Stephen King adaptations. I own a lot of them. I've watched a lot of the movies in miniseries and a couple of his TV shows. I haven't read a lot of his books, though. I mean, I'm just being honest. I'm not super into his novels. This one is less known than Stand By Me, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, hell, even Pet Cemetery, and Cujo. There are many adaptations that are more known than this one, but it's an interesting movie nonetheless. It's based on Cycle of the Werewolf, which he wrote. He actually did the screenplay for this movie, so he actually was directly involved with it. It was directed by Daniel Attias, and it was released on October 11th of 1985. Now, as far as the cast, there's quite a few known names in it. You got Corey Haim, who plays Marty, pretty much the lead, and then you got Gary Busey, who plays his Uncle Red. Marty is actually in a wheelchair in this movie, and Uncle Red, I would say Marty thinks very highly of Uncle Red, and he feels like Uncle Red is the only person who really understands him. Then you also got other guys such as Lawrence Tierney, who I know from Reservoir Dogs, Everett McGill, who actually I thought was Christopher Reeve when I first saw him in this. James Gammon, who is in Major League. Terry O'Quinn, who is in Lost, Tombstone, Young Guns. There's a lot of recognizable actors in this one, which I thought was great. Gary Busey's absolutely the heart of the movie. Every scene is better when him and Corey Haim are in it. The plot's pretty Stephen King-ish. Murders are happening in a small town. Imagine that. If you know anything about Stephen King, books, TV shows, adaptations, movies, a lot of them take place in a small town, usually in a small town in Maine. Nobody knows who's responsible for the killings. Marty's connecting the dots, and he thinks it's a werewolf based on just clues. There's a lot of mystery and a whodunit atmosphere to it. Nobody really believes Marty that a werewolf's the one that's actually terrorizing the town. Because it's a small town there, you get like those mob justice scenes. And because you don't know who the killer is, you definitely get that horror and mystery element to go along with it. Now, as far as what worked in the movie for me, definitely the small town atmosphere. I personally feel that most Stephen King adaptations do the small town atmosphere right. I think the werewolf mystery hook is absolutely enough to keep you at least interested in watching the movie, especially if you're into werewolf stories or just mystery stories in general. It's got a very strong second half. I also had already mentioned, but Gary Busey and Corey Haim are two very competent leads. They definitely carry the movie. The character actors I already said were great to see. But it's also got a little bit of a Halloween season feel to it. I'm not going to say the whole movie takes place around Halloween, but watching it, I'm like, I feel like this one would hit a little better if you were watching it around Halloween. So I would definitely call it an easy October watch. One of the best parts of the movie, actually, because Marty's in a wheelchair, is the wheelchair that he has, and then the wheelchair that Uncle Red makes for him. It's just a cool little concoction. I like that about 80s and 90s movies when they have these machines that get built in the movie that just be like, oh man, that's really cool. Now there's a little bit that really didn't work for me while watching this movie. And one of the biggest things was, I'd say, the score. I just hated the score. It just felt cheap. It felt really just like tingy and made for TV 80s, and like just a tone that you don't hear that much anymore, and for a good reason. I think the first 30 to 40 minutes are really slow. The movie's a little over 90 minutes, and it takes a while to get going. Like, you're kind of toe tapping. I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? Once it gets going, it's great. It picks up, and I am having a good time watching it, but just getting there was definitely half the battle with this one. There was some weird narration in the movie. Like, the opening starts with that narration, and those first 30 to 40 minutes are so slow that you forget about it, and then you hear the narration again, and the tone of it just does not match the movie, and it cheapens the movie, giving it that made-for-TV feel even more. And I really, if I'm being honest, I hated the narration in this. I could have done without it altogether. I already have mentioned the pacing. I mean, the pacing is uneven. It really is. If the pacing was tighter, that first half would have flowed better. It does tighten up at the end, but it takes a while to get there. One thing I do have to say is a common criticism for Stephen King adaptations is that if he's actually involved, he kind of makes the movie or the TV show worse. And I think it's because he is so revered as an author and his reputation is so high that he ends up being associated with a lot of yes men on the project. So if the director wants to go a certain way, I have a gut feeling Stephen King's like, no, you should go this way. And they just say yes because it's his work and he's Stephen King. And I think that really shows how it's better sometimes when he's not involved. And I think the fact that he wrote this screenplay, something tells me he was pretty involved with this. And I think that hurts the movie a lot. And I don't know if the book to screen got super muddy. I'd like to actually read the book if it's not super long after watching this, but it just, it feels muddy. It honestly feels muddy watching this. Maybe that's why the movie never reaches a certain level to me as far as being like one of the best werewolf movies that I've ever watched. So I think the bigger questions with this movie too is it underrated to me? I don't know. I don't necessarily know if it's underrated. Maybe it's overlooked would be a better statement in the sense of I'm not mad that I watched this one again. And I have watched it a couple times because it is a Stephen King adaptation. I keep saying that. I do like his adaptations and I am forgiving of certain films and movies because he wrote it. And I just find his atmospheres and settings really interesting sometimes. Do I consider it a forgotten gem? No, it's an overlooked Stephen King movie. It's not a forgotten gem and it's definitely not underrated. Do I think it's a better than average werewolf movie? No, I think it's a pretty average werewolf movie. I've seen worse, but I've seen a lot better. So the defenders of this movie, though, would definitely say that it's a really good movie because they do like the 80s atmosphere. They do like Stephen King. They do like Gary Busey, and they're Corey Haim fans. I have no doubt that there's people out there who would definitely rate it higher than I am right now because of that. It's definitely not The Shining. It's definitely not Stand By Me. It's not Shawshank or Green Mile. It feels lower budget than all them, but it's not the worst one I've ever seen. I've seen a couple really bad Stephen King adaptations. I'm not going to say what, but I've seen a couple that are worse than this. But I don't really have much else to say about this one. This one was kind of a hard one to talk about, but I wanted to challenge myself to talking about it as far as what it is. A few more notes that I'd like to actually bring up that I just found interesting was I had mentioned it was released in October 11th of 1985. It had a budget of $7 million and it grossed $12.4 million. And then it was a pretty popular rental movie. I'm going to assume because of that little bit of Halloween vibe and it being a Stephen King adaptation and a horror movie. I that made it make its money back. But when it debuted at number 3 in the box office, which I found interesting. The opening weekend, it made $4 million. The number 1 movie at the box office that week was Commando, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that actually was released October 4th, the week before. And it was on its second weekend, so it had legs and it held that number 1 spot. And then the number 2 movie was actually one I've never heard of called Jagged Edge, but it starred Jeff Bridges and Glenn Close, which I thought was pretty interesting because Jeff Bridges is one of those actors that I constantly find these obscure movies that I've never heard of, especially in the 80s that he was in. And then the other real fun fact as far as the box office of that week was that the number 5 spot was Back to the Future. That was released all the way back in July of 85, and it was still had such strong legs that it was in the top 5 most watched movies 3 months later. It shows how big that movie is and was. But overall, if I had to rate this one, I would definitely call it a rent it easily. Like a true rent it. You can watch it. There's not enough there to piss you off, but there's not enough there to say, oh, this is so good, I want to watch it again or buy it. You know, it's one that I might watch again around Halloween in a couple of years. But other than that, it's truly a middle of the road werewolf movie. You can't get more middle of the road than this one. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It was very meh. Honestly, outside of movies just absolutely sucking, meh movies are kind of my next least favorite movie. I like a movie I can riff and make fun of. I don't hate a movie that I can just rent and just watch one time, but I don't like the feeling of meh, and that's what this one felt like to me. But if you're a fan of Stephen King, if you're a fan of werewolves, if you're a fan of Gary Busey or Corey Haim, I definitely say watch it at least once. Go check it out if you've never seen it. And with that is Stephen King's Silver Bullet. All right, guys, let me know what you think. Have you seen Stephen King's Silver Bullet? Do you hold it in higher regard than I do? Do you agree with me that it's just kind of middle of the road? Do you actually think it just absolutely sucks? Let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe and be on the lookout for more videos like this. And with that, thanks.